In the intricate tapestry of life, every story has multiple facets, each perspective weaving its own narrative. Today, we delve into a tale that unfolds in the world of fame and glamour, revealing the complexities of human emotions and relationships. This is the story of when David Beckham had an affair with Rebecca Loos. Our journey begins with David, a celebrated soccer star at the pinnacle of his career. His move to Madrid opens a chapter filled with success and adulation, yet it's marred by a deep-seated loneliness, a longing for the family he left behind in London. As David navigates this new life, he finds himself drawn to Rebecca, his personal assistant, leading to choices that threaten the very fabric of his world. Then, we step into the shoes of Victoria, a pop star and fashion designer, balancing the dazzle of the limelight with the responsibilities of motherhood. Her resilience is put to the test as she grapples with the distance from her husband David and the revelations that shake the core of their marriage. Victoria's story is one of strength, love, and the struggle to find forgiveness in the face of betrayal. Finally, we see through the eyes of Rebecca, the personal assistant, who finds herself in the unexpected and tumultuous world of an affair. Torn between her growing feelings for David and the moral dilemmas they present, Rebecca's narrative explores the consequences of forbidden love and the journey towards self-forgiveness and redemption. Each perspective offers a unique insight into the choices we make, the paths we tread, and the intricate dance of human relationships. Each writer their story on Reddit. Join me as I unravel the threads of this compelling story, understanding that in the realm of the heart, nothing is ever black and white. Hi Reddit, my name is David, and this is my story. From the moment I set foot in Madrid, the vibrant energy of the city electrified my senses. The cheers of the fans, the expectation in their eyes. It was all a soccer player like me could dream of, but deep inside there was an aching void, a longing for something more than just the game. I, David, had left behind more than just my home in London. I had left my heart with Victoria and our kids. Victoria, with her chart-topping hits and dazzling performances, was the epitome of a pop star. She was my rock, my anchor in the tempestuous sea of fame. Our parting at the airport was a scene etched with tears and promises. She had responsibilities, a fashion line, and our children to look after in London. I had a new chapter to begin in Madrid, a career move that was too significant to pass up. But no amount of fame or success could fill the void her absence left in me. The days turned into weeks, and the glamour of the new city started to fade. The bustling streets of Madrid, filled with history and culture, seemed hollow without my family to share it with. On the field, I was unstoppable, a force to be reckoned with. But off the field, I was just David, the man who missed his wife and children more than anything. The loneliness was an uninvited guest that lingered in my lavish apartment, in the silent dinners, and in the endless nights staring at the ceiling. I'd call Victoria, hear about the kids' antics, and we'd laugh. But as the call ended, a profound silence would take over, reminding me of the distance between us. It was during these early days in Madrid, amidst my rising fame and deepening solitude, that I met Rebecca. She was assigned as my personal assistant by the club. Rebecca was efficient, professional, and had an air of simplicity about her that was refreshing in a world full of complexities. Our initial interactions were strictly professional, but there was an undeniable ease in our conversations. She understood the demands of my career, and slowly our talks went beyond schedules and practices. As days passed, Rebecca became more than just an assistant. She was a friend, a confidant in a city where I knew so few. I didn't realize it then, but this was the beginning of a journey that would shake the very foundation of everything I held dear. Rebecca's presence in my life started as a ripple but soon turned into waves. She was unlike anyone I had met. Her laugh was contagious, her insight sharp, and she didn't treat me like David the soccer star. But just as David, it was a refreshing change. Our first real conversation happened unexpectedly. One evening, after a particularly grueling practice session, I found myself venting to her about the challenges of adapting to a new team and city. To my surprise, she listened intently, nodding and offering simple yet thoughtful advice. She spoke of Madrid not just as a city, but as a story waiting to be explored, with hidden alleys and uncharted histories. In the weeks that followed, our interactions grew. Rebecca would often accompany me to team events and public appearances. She was always there, a steady presence in the chaotic world I lived in. It wasn't long before she started showing me around Madrid, the city she adored. Through her eyes, I began to see its charm. The quaint cafes, the vibrant markets, the serene parks. Madrid was slowly weaving its magic around me. But it was during a quiet evening walk through Retiro Park that I realized how much I had come to enjoy her company. As we strolled along the glassy lake, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the water, Rebecca shared stories of her life, her dreams, her challenges, her joys and sorrows. It was then, listening to her speak with such passion, that I felt a connection, a bond that went beyond just friendship. She was filling a void in my life, a void I hadn't realized was growing deeper. However, with this growing closeness came a twinge of guilt. Victoria, my wife, the mother of my children, was miles away, and here I was, finding solace in another woman's company. I pushed these thoughts away, convincing myself that Rebecca was just a friend, nothing more. But deep down, I knew I was treading a dangerous path. Rebecca was the antidote to my loneliness, a friend in a lonely city. But as our bond strengthened, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. I was a married man, a father, and here I was, walking a fine line that could lead to a precipice I wasn't ready to face. As the days turned into months, my life in Madrid began to settle into a routine. The roar of the crowd in the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, the adrenaline of the game, the accolades, it was everything I had dreamed of. Yet every triumph on the field was met with a silent emptiness off it. The loneliness that I had felt upon my arrival in Madrid was no longer just an occasional visitor. It had become my constant companion. Rebecca, with her easy smile and understanding nature, became a beacon of comfort in my otherwise solitary world. We started spending more time together, sometimes out of necessity for work, but often it was just for a coffee or a walk. It was a respite from the solitude, a few moments of companionship that I desperately craved. The contrast between my public persona and my private life was stark. In the eyes of the world, I was David, the star soccer player, living a dream life. But behind closed doors, I was just a man grappling with isolation. The time difference between Madrid and London made it challenging to connect with Victoria and the kids. Our conversations, though full of love and laughter, were a painful reminder of the distance between us. Victoria was incredible, juggling her career and our kids with a grace that left me in awe. She never complained, always supportive, always understanding. But the guilt of leaving her to handle everything alone gnawed at me. I missed the simple things, family dinners, bedtime stories, lazy Sundays. I missed my partner, my best friend. It was during one of these low points that Rebecca became more than just a friend. We were at a team event, and I was feeling particularly down, missing an important family occasion back in London. Rebecca noticed my mood and, without a word, just stayed by my side, offering silent support. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. She understood me in ways I couldn't explain. The more time I spent with Rebecca, the more I felt a dangerous shift in my feelings. It was a slow, creeping realization that I was starting to see her as more than just a friend. This realization brought a new wave of guilt. I loved Victoria, my family was my world, but here I was, emotionally drifting towards another woman. As much as I tried to deny it, my feelings for Rebecca were becoming harder to ignore. The loneliness that had once been my only companion in Madrid was now being replaced by something far more complex and perilous. The line between friendship and something more is often thin and easily crossed. For me, that line blurred one evening that started like any other, but ended in a way that changed everything. It was a quiet night in Madrid, the city's usual bustle subdued by a gentle rain. Rebecca and I had been working late, going over some endorsements and team schedules. There was a comfort in her presence, a familiarity that had grown over the months. As we wrapped up, she mentioned a new art exhibit in the city centre. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she talked about it. On a whim, I suggested we go see it right then. Walking through the exhibit, I saw a side of Rebecca I hadn't seen before. She was passionate about art, explaining the stories behind each piece with an enthusiasm that was infectious. I found myself drawn to her, not just for her knowledge, but for the way she saw the world, with wonder and an open heart. As we stood before a particularly striking painting, our conversation drifted to personal dreams and aspirations. Rebecca spoke of her love for art, how she had once dreamt of being an artist herself. There was a vulnerability in her voice, a glimpse into her inner world that she rarely showed. Without thinking, I reached out, gently touching her hand. It was an innocent gesture, but the moment our fingers touched, a jolt of electricity shot through me. We both froze, our eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. The air around us was charged with an intensity that neither of us had anticipated. It was then that I realized how deep my feelings for her had run. This was no longer just a friendship. I had crossed a line I hadn't even seen. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We left the exhibit, walking through the rain-soaked streets of Madrid, lost in our own thoughts. The silence between us was heavy with the weight of unspoken words. By the time we said goodnight, the reality of what had happened, of what I was feeling, settled heavily on my shoulders. That night, I lay awake, wrestling with my emotions. Guilt, desire, confusion, they all waged a war within me. I thought of Victoria, of my children, of the life we had built together. I loved them more than anything, and yet here I was, emotionally entangled with another woman. I felt like I was living two lives, and the deceit of it all weighed heavily on me. Crossing that line with Rebecca had awakened feelings I couldn't just put back in a box. I was at a crossroads, torn between the life I had and the one I was inadvertently creating in Madrid. The guilt was overwhelming, but so were my feelings for Rebecca. It was a mess of emotions, and I had no idea how to navigate them. The period following my lapse in judgment with Rebecca was marked by a deep, gnawing guilt. The physical intimacy, though brief and quickly regretted, marked a line I had never intended to cross. Each morning, as I faced myself in the mirror, the reflection staring back seemed to be of a stranger, someone who had lost his way amidst the seductions of a new life. The guilt was exacerbated by every call with Victoria. Her voice, filled with the familiar warmth and love, felt like a dagger to my conscience. She talked about the children, her latest performances, the mundane yet precious details of the life we shared. With every word, I felt the enormity of my betrayal. I missed her terribly, and the realization that I had jeopardized our years of love and trust for a fleeting moment of weakness was crushing. Rebecca, for her part, seemed to sense the shift in me. Our interactions became charged with an undercurrent of tension and regret. I could see in her eyes a mixture of sadness and understanding, as if she too realized the gravity of what had transpired between us. One night, after a game, I found myself confiding in a teammate, albeit without revealing the full extent of my infidelity. His response was simple, yet profound. "Remember, amigo, the grass isn't always greener. It's green where you water it." His words hit home. I realized that I had neglected the beautiful garden of my own family life for an illusory patch of green. I knew then what I had to do. The relationship with Rebecca, now stained by physical betrayal, had to end. It was a difficult conversation, one filled with tears and a shared sense of loss. Rebecca was more than just a fling. There had been genuine feelings involved, but that only made the situation more painful and complex. She requested a transfer to another department, a decision that was both painful and necessary for both of us. With her departure, the loneliness and silence in Madrid became more pronounced. But this time, it was a loneliness I accepted as a consequence of my actions. I threw myself into my soccer, trying to find solace in the game that had been my life's passion. I reached out to Victoria more often, attempting to bridge the emotional gap I had created. Small gestures, frequent calls, anything to feel closer to her and our children. But beneath these efforts, there was a constant fear, the fear that one day Victoria would find out about my indiscretion and that our world would come crashing down. The guilt of my physical betrayal with Rebecca became a shadow that followed me everywhere. It was a reminder of a mistake that I could never take back, a moment of weakness that had the power to destroy everything I held dear. The months following my decision to end things with Rebecca were filled with a quiet turmoil. On the surface, life went on as usual. I played my heart out on the field, smiling for the cameras, signing autographs, living the life of a celebrated soccer player. But inside, I was battling a relentless storm of guilt and fear. Victoria, unaware of the storm brewing in my heart, continued to be the amazing partner she always was. Her calls were full of laughter, updates about the kids, and plans for our future. Each time I heard her voice, my heart ached with the burden of my secret. Then one fateful day, the truth came to light in the most unexpected way. A tabloid got hold of the story about my affair with Rebecca. The news spread like wildfire, leaving me no place to hide. I remember staring at the headline, my heart sinking, knowing that my world was about to crumble. The call to Victoria was the hardest thing I've ever done. Her initial silence was more painful than any words of anger could have been. When she finally spoke, her voice was a mix of hurt, disbelief, and sadness. I had no defense, no excuses. I had made a grave mistake, and now I was facing the consequences. The days that followed were a blur. Victoria and I had long, painful conversations. There were tears, arguments, and moments of painful silence. The revelation of my affair was like a wrecking ball, shattering the trust and love we had built over the years. But amidst the heartbreak, there was also a glimmer of hope. Victoria's love for me, though deeply wounded, was still there. She was hurt and angry, but she wasn't ready to give up on us, on our family. We decided to seek counseling to try and salvage what was left of our relationship. It was a long, difficult journey. Rebuilding trust was not easy, and there were moments when it all seemed futile. But we persevered, holding on to the love that had brought us together in the first place. The process was painful, but it was also healing. We learned to communicate better, to understand each other's fears and vulnerabilities. As for Rebecca, our paths never crossed again. I heard she had moved on to a new job, a new city. I wished her well, hoping she would find happiness that was not marred by mistakes like mine. In the end, the experience changed me. I became more aware of my actions and their consequences. I learned the importance of honesty and the value of the relationships we often take for granted. Victoria and I, with our renewed commitment to each other, emerged stronger. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Looking back, I realized that the glitz and glamour of a new life can never compare to the deep, fulfilling love of family. I had strayed, lost my way, but in the end, I found my way back home. We will now hear from Victoria, her side of the story. The day David left for Madrid was a day filled with conflicting emotions. As I watched him pack his bags, each item he placed felt like a piece of my heart being tucked away. He was not just my husband, but my best friend, and the thought of him being miles away in a different country was daunting. We had discussed this move at length. David's transfer to Real Madrid was a dream opportunity for him, a chance to shine on one of the world's biggest stages. I couldn't be the one to hold him back, not when I knew how much this meant to him. But as Victoria, the pop star, the public figure, I had my own dreams and responsibilities. My career, our children in London. There was so much tying me here. The day he left, the house felt emptier. Our children asked questions I struggled to answer. Why can't Daddy come with us? When will we see him again? As I tucked them into bed, my heart ached, not just for them, but for the partnership I relied on. David and I had always been a team, tackling the challenges of fame and family together. Now, I was to face it alone. The first few weeks were the hardest, juggling designing Victoria Beckham lines and public appearances while ensuring our children felt loved and cared for was a task that often left me exhausted. But I couldn't let that show. The cameras, the fans, the critics, they were all watching, waiting for a slip, a sign of weakness. I had to be strong, not just for my family, but for the brand, for brand Beckham. Every call with David was a mix of joy and pain. Hearing his voice, his laughter, brought a sense of normalcy, but it also reminded me of the distance between us. We talked about our days, our challenges, and shared laughs. But as each call ended, a profound sense of loneliness settled in. I missed having him by my side, his touch, his presence, his support. Despite the facade of strength I put on for the world, there were nights I cried myself to sleep. The weight of single parenting, the pressure of my career, and the loneliness of my bed were overwhelming. But morning always came, and with it the necessity to rise and face the world. I found solace in my work, in the joy of designing that touched people's hearts. My children were my strength, their smiles and hugs the balm to my weary soul. Friends and family were supportive, but in the quiet moments of the night, it was his voice I longed for, his laughter I missed. That first chapter of our long-distance relationship was a testament to the challenges of balancing fame, love, and family. It was a period of growth, of finding strength I never knew I had, and of holding onto the hope that despite the distance, our love would endure. The spotlight never dims, especially not for Victoria Beckham. With David in Madrid, I felt the glare of the spotlight even more intensely. Balancing my career with motherhood became a daily performance, one that required all my strength and resolve. Balancing the life of a pop star and a mother was a challenge I embraced with pride and determination. The children were my priority, and I juggled schedules to make sure I was there for school plays, parent-teacher meetings, and bedtime stories. I wanted to ensure that despite David's absence, they felt loved and secure. But amidst the chaos of my career and the responsibilities of parenting, I often found myself lost in thoughts of David. I missed our late-night talks, the way he made me laugh, the comfort of his embrace. Video calls and messages were a poor substitute for his physical presence. There were nights I'd watch old videos of us, reminiscing about the times we were inseparable. The paparazzi were relentless, always lurking, always prying. Rumors and speculations about our marriage began to surface, fueled by our physical distance. I faced them with a stoic smile, denying any troubles in paradise, but behind closed doors I couldn't help but feel the strain. Maintaining the facade of a perfect life was exhausting. Despite the challenges, there were moments of genuine happiness. The children's laughter, the successful release of a new line, the support of my fans. These were the things that kept me going. I was living my dream, but the dream had its price. As months passed, I adapted to this new reality. I became more self-reliant, more resilient. The loneliness was still there, a silent companion, but I learned to keep it at bay with the love of my children and the passion for design. Yet in the quietest hours of the night, I couldn't help but wonder if the distance was changing us. Was David feeling the same loneliness? Were we drifting apart? These thoughts haunted me, but I pushed them away, focusing instead on the life I had in front of me. As the seasons changed in London, the leaves turning golden and then falling, so too did subtle changes occur in the rhythm of my life. The initial shock of David's move had settled into a routine, a new normal, but it wasn't without its challenges. My career was soaring, and the kids were adapting well, but there was an undercurrent of doubt and loneliness that I couldn't shake off. The distance between David and me was more than just physical. Our conversations, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, started to feel more functional, more about schedules and the kids than about us. I found myself filling in the silences with chatter about my day, avoiding the unspoken questions that lingered in the air. Was our love strong enough to withstand this separation? I missed the little things, the surprise date nights, the impromptu dance sessions in our living room, the quiet mornings in bed. These memories were now just that, memories. My heart ached for his touch, for the comfort of his presence, but with each passing day, that longing was tinged with a growing fear. Was he feeling the same, or was he finding new ways to fill the void I left in Madrid? My friends and family saw only the strong, unflappable Victoria Beckham. I wore my public persona like armor, shielding myself from the prying eyes and invasive questions. But beneath the surface, there was a woman wrestling with insecurities and doubts. David's absence had left a void, and I feared what it meant for our future. The kids would ask about him, their innocent questions often catching me off guard. When is Daddy coming home? Why can't we live in Madrid with him? I answered with reassurances, masking my own uncertainties. I wanted to protect them from the complexities of adult relationships, from the fears that kept me awake at night. Social media and tabloids didn't help. I saw pictures of David in Madrid. His new life splashed across the pages. He seemed happy, surrounded by new friends and teammates. Each photo felt like a reminder of the widening gap in our lives. I trusted him, but trust does little to quiet the whispers of doubt in the middle of the night. In moments of weakness, I wondered about the women he met, the temptations that his new life presented. It was a thought that clawed at me, fueled by the distance and the silence that had crept into our conversations. I pushed these thoughts away, reminding myself of the love we shared, the years of togetherness that had weathered many storms. Despite it all, I held on to the hope that this was just a phase, a challenge that we would overcome. Our love had always been strong, but as I lay in bed, staring at the empty space beside me, I couldn't help but wonder if strength alone was enough to bridge the distance between us. The day I discovered David's affair was like any other day, until it wasn't. I was in the midst of preparing for a new line. The house was buzzing with the kids' energy, and my phone was a constant companion, chiming with messages and calls. Amidst the chaos, a call from a friend, a hesitancy in her voice, changed everything. "I didn't know whether to tell you, Victoria, but there are rumors about David and someone in Madrid." Her words were cautious, tiptoeing around the bombshell she had just dropped. I remember the momentary silence, the way my heart seemed to stop, then start again at a frantic pace. My mind raced as I asked for details, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. She mentioned a woman's name, Rebecca, and spoke of photos and whispers within their social circles. I thanked her, ended the call, and stood there, my world spinning. The pain was immediate and sharp like a physical wound. David, my David, involved with someone else. It couldn't be true. We had our challenges, yes, but to betray our vows, our family, the very thought was unbearable. I needed to know the truth. I confronted David over a video call, my hands trembling as I dialed his number. His face appeared familiar yet so distant, and I asked him point blank about Rebecca. The silence that followed was the most telling. His hesitation, the way his eyes shifted, the eventual admission. It was all I needed to confirm my fears. The revelation shattered something inside me. The trust, the years of love, the shared memories. How could he risk it all? The days that followed were a blur of tears, anger, and disbelief. I moved through them like a ghost, numb and yet feeling every emotion with a raw intensity. I struggled to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the kids, to shield them from the storm that had engulfed me. I felt betrayed, not just by David's infidelity, but by the life we had built together. Every memory was now tainted, every moment we shared questioned. Had he been thinking of her? Were his declarations of love and longing just empty words? The media frenzy that ensued added to the agony. Speculations, accusations, and pitying looks were my new reality. I was no longer just Victoria Beckham, the pop star. I was the woman whose husband had strayed. But amidst the heartache, there was a burning anger, a sense of injustice. I had stood by David, supported his dreams, while balancing my own career and our family. And this was how he repaid me? The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, consuming. As I grappled with the truth, I realized that this was a crossroads in my life. I could let this define me, let it destroy me, or I could rise from it, stronger and more resilient. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was more than just a victim of infidelity. I was Victoria Beckham, and I would not be broken. In the weeks following the revelation of David's affair, I found myself navigating through a tempest of emotions. The initial shock had given way to a deep, searing pain, a sense of betrayal that permeated every aspect of my life. There were moments of intense anger, where I questioned everything about our relationship, and then there were moments of profound sadness, a mourning for the love and trust that had been so carelessly shattered. My home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, felt empty, a stark reminder of the fracture in my family. I looked at our children, so innocent and unaware of the storm raging around them, and my heart ached. They deserved a happy, stable home, and I felt like I had failed them. As a public figure, I had no luxury of grieving in private. The paparazzi were relentless, capturing every somber expression, every forced smile. Fans and critics alike speculated on my next move, and the media painted a picture of a scorned woman, a narrative I neither wanted nor welcomed. I grappled with the idea of forgiveness. Could I forgive David for his betrayal? The question haunted me day and night. Our history, our children, the love that had once been the cornerstone of our lives, they all pulled at my heart, urging me to consider reconciliation. But then, the image of him with someone else, the lies, the deceit, they pushed me back, fueling a resentment that I struggled to overcome. I also sought solace in my friends and family. Their support was unwavering, a lifeline in my darkest moments. They reminded me of who I was beyond my marriage, a successful artist, a loving mother, a strong woman who had overcome challenges before. But healing is not a linear process. There were setbacks, moments of weakness when I would reach for my phone to call David, to hear his voice, to try and make sense of the chaos. And then I would remember the betrayal, and the resolve would harden once again. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see things with more clarity. David's actions had broken our marriage, but they had not broken me. I started to envision a future, one where I could be happy, with or without him. It was a scary, yet empowering realization. The journey through the tides of heartache was teaching me more about myself than I had ever known. I was learning to forgive, not for David, but for myself. To let go of the anger and the pain, not to forget what had happened, but to move beyond it. As the final chapter of this tumultuous period in my life began to unfold, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The journey through the pain and betrayal had been harrowing, but it had also been a period of profound self-reflection and growth. I had confronted my deepest fears, faced the harsh glare of public scrutiny, and wrestled with the complexities of forgiveness and trust. In those moments of introspection, I realized the strength and resilience that lay within me. Victoria Beckham, the pop star, the fashion icon, the wife and mother, was more than the sum of her roles. I was a woman who had weathered storms and emerged stronger, a woman capable of charting her own course. The decision to rebuild my marriage with David was not made lightly. It came from a place of understanding, of recognizing the imperfections in both of us, and the realization that our history and our family were worth fighting for. Forgiveness did not come all at once. It was a gradual process, a journey of rebuilding trust one step at a time. We sought counseling, a space where we could unravel the tangled emotions and misunderstandings that had led us to this point. It was a humbling experience, to lay bare our vulnerabilities, to listen and to be heard. David's remorse was evident, his commitment to our family unwavering, and slowly, the pieces of our shattered trust began to mend. Through it all, I held on to my career, my passion for music and fashion. These were not just distractions from my personal life, but integral parts of who I was. They gave me purpose, a sense of achievement and joy that was mine alone. My children, too, were a source of strength and inspiration. Their unconditional love and laughter were reminders of the beauty and simplicity in life. I wanted to be a role model for them, to show them that even in the face of adversity, one can rise and thrive. As I moved forward, I also found a new sense of independence. The ordeal had taught me the importance of self-love and self-care. I was more in tune with my needs and desires, more confident in my decisions, and more aware of my worth. Emerging stronger from this chapter of my life, I realized that while the scars of betrayal may never fully fade, they are also a testament to my resilience. They remind me of what I have overcome and the strength that lies within. In the end, the journey was not just about overcoming the infidelity, but about rediscovering myself, redefining my marriage, and reaffirming my commitment to my family. It was about finding peace, not just with David, but within myself. I stepped into the future with a renewed sense of hope, a deeper understanding of love, and a stronger sense of who I am. The shadows in the spotlight had receded, giving way to a light that was brighter and more resilient than ever before. We've heard from David and Victoria. Now let's hear Rebecca's side of the story. Stepping into the world of Real Madrid as David's personal assistant felt like entering a realm I had only dreamed of. The buzz of the stadium, the glamour of the players, the fans chanting his name, it was all exhilarating. I, Rebecca, was about to be a part of this world, and the thought both thrilled and terrified me. On my first day, I remember standing outside the training facility, taking a deep breath before walking in. I was determined to make a good impression, to show that I was more than capable of handling the demands of the job. The world of professional soccer was new to me, but I was no stranger to hard work and dedication. Then I met David. He was everything the media portrayed him to be: charming, handsome, and incredibly talented. But there was also a humility about him, a down-to-earth quality that I hadn't expected. He welcomed me with a warm smile, making me feel instantly at ease. As I settled into my role, I quickly learned the ropes. My days were filled with managing schedules, organizing events, and ensuring David's life off the field ran smoothly. It was a fast-paced environment, but I thrived on the challenge. David was a dream to work for, appreciative, respectful, and always considerate. But it wasn't just the job that captivated me. It was David himself. I found myself increasingly drawn to him. It wasn't just his looks or his fame, but the person he was: dedicated, passionate about his sport, and deeply caring about his family. He often spoke of Victoria and the kids, his face lighting up with every mention. It was endearing, and it made me respect him even more. As the weeks went by, I found myself looking forward to our interactions, to the moments when we could talk about things beyond work. There was a connection, a mutual understanding that seemed to go deeper than just employee and employer. I knew it was dangerous territory, but I couldn't help but be drawn in. I told myself it was just admiration, a crush that would fade with time. But as I watched him on the field, commanding and confident, and then saw the other side of him, thoughtful, vulnerable, I knew my feelings were more than just fleeting. It was a new beginning for me, not just career-wise, but personally. I was stepping into a world that was exciting and daunting, and somewhere along the line, my admiration for David was turning into something I couldn't quite define yet. It was a path I never intended to walk, but with each passing day, I found myself moving further along it. As the days turned into weeks, my role as David's personal assistant became more than just a job. It was a window into a world I had never imagined. I was immersed in the high-paced lifestyle of a top athlete, and at the center of it all was David, increasingly becoming more than just my employer. Our professional relationship gradually evolved. We started spending more time together, not just in the context of work, but in moments that straddled the line between professional and personal. Coffee breaks turned into long conversations about life, dreams, and even fears. David was open, sharing his thoughts and experiences with a sincerity that took me by surprise. I began to see the man behind the fame. He was more than a soccer legend. He was someone dealing with his own struggles, his loneliness in Madrid away from his family. It was in these vulnerable moments that our connection deepened. I found myself eagerly anticipating our talks, the moments when we could just be Rebecca and David, not the assistant and the soccer star. This growing closeness, however, was not without its complications. I was acutely aware of his status as a married man, a father, and I, Rebecca, was not one to cross lines. But the heart is not always ruled by logic. My feelings for David were blossoming into something I couldn't ignore. It was a mix of admiration, affection, and something more profound, something that scared me. I grappled with my conscience, questioning my morals and values. I had never envisioned myself in such a situation, yet here I was, drawn to a man who was off limits. It felt like walking a tightrope, balancing my professional responsibilities with the emotional turmoil that was brewing inside. The more time I spent with David, the more I saw the loneliness he was facing. His calls with Victoria and the kids were filled with love and longing, and it pained me to see him struggle with the distance. In those moments, I wanted to be there for him, to offer comfort and support. My role as an assistant was blurring, and I was stepping into uncharted territory. It wasn't just about the physical attraction, though that was undeniable. It was the emotional bond that was forming, the sense of being understood and appreciated. David valued my opinions, respected my insights, and treated me as an equal. It was intoxicating, being in the orbit of someone who exuded such charisma, yet showed such genuine respect for me. As the connection grew, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me knew the dangers of the path I was on, yet another part was drawn to the warmth and affection that David offered. It was a dangerous game, one that could lead to consequences I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The line between professionalism and personal feelings is often clear. But in my case with David, it became a blurred boundary that we eventually crossed. It started with small, seemingly innocent gestures, a hand on the shoulder, lingering looks, conversations that delved deep into the night. But as time passed, these moments became charged with an unspoken tension, an attraction that was becoming harder to ignore. I remember the evening it all changed. We were in Madrid, walking back from a team event. The city was bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and the air was filled with the buzz of nightlife. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, laughter mingling with serious discussions about our lives. It was then that David took my hand. It was a simple act, but laden with meaning. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear. That touch was the catalyst. It broke down the barriers we had been carefully maintaining. What followed was a whirlwind of emotions, a connection that turned physical. In those moments, nothing else seemed to matter. The reality of our respective lives faded into the background, overshadowed by the intensity of what we were feeling. I knew it was wrong, the affair, the secrecy. David was a married man, a father, and I was his assistant. The implications were enormous, the potential for hurt undeniable. But in the bubble we had created, those concerns seemed distant. We were caught in the tide of our emotions, rational thought eclipsed by the passion of the moment. The guilt, however, was a constant shadow. It crept in during the quiet moments, the times when I was alone with my thoughts. I questioned my actions, my morality. I had always considered myself a person of integrity, but here I was, in a situation I had never imagined I would be a part of. The affair continued, a secret shared only between us. We were careful, aware of the risks involved. Every stolen moment, every covert meeting was laced with a thrill that was intoxicating, but also terrifying. The knowledge that we were playing with fire added an intensity to our relationship, but it also brought a constant undercurrent of anxiety. I struggled with the duality of my feelings. On one hand, there was the undeniable connection with David, the sense of being truly seen and understood. On the other hand, there was the growing realization of the pain we could cause, the potential devastation to his family. I was torn between the love I felt for him and the knowledge that what we were doing was fundamentally wrong. As the affair deepened, so did the complexity of our situation. We were entangled not just physically, but emotionally. It was no longer just a fling. It had become a relationship that had the power to destroy lives, and yet stepping away seemed impossible, the pull between us too strong to resist. As the affair with David continued, it became a tangled web of emotions and secrecy. Every stolen moment was a mix of exhilaration and guilt, a dichotomy that weighed heavily on my conscience. The Rebecca who started as David's personal assistant, confident and principled, was now caught in a moral quandary I had never anticipated. The reality of the affair was far from the glamorous liaisons often depicted in movies. It was fraught with complexities and a constant fear of discovery. We were both aware of the stakes, especially David, who had his family and career to consider. Our meetings were discreet, our conversations cautious, and every public interaction was a carefully choreographed dance of professionalism. In those moments of intimacy, when it was just the two of us, the rest of the world faded away. David shared his loneliness, his struggles with being away from his family, and I listened, providing the support and understanding he craved. It was a connection that went beyond the physical. It was emotional, a bond that seemed to fill the voids in both our lives. But the affair was like a house of cards, fragile and unstable. The guilt was always there, lurking in the background. I struggled with the knowledge of what we were doing to Victoria and their children. The thought of being the other woman in a narrative I never wanted to be part of was distressing. The secrecy of our relationship started to take its toll. I felt isolated, unable to share my feelings with anyone. My life had become a series of lies, a far cry from the transparency I valued. I was living in the shadow of fame, a world where appearances were everything, and the truth was a luxury we couldn't afford. There were moments I considered ending it, walking away from the situation that was clearly wrong. But the connection with David, the feelings we shared, made it incredibly difficult to let go. It was a constant battle between my heart and my head, between the love I felt for him and the knowledge of the consequences should our affair come to light. As time passed, the strain began to show. I noticed the changes in David, too. The weight of our secret was a burden we both carried, and it started to affect him in ways I hadn't anticipated. The carefree moments became fewer, replaced by a seriousness that spoke of the internal conflict he was facing. The affair, once a source of comfort and escape, had become a complicated mess of emotions and moral dilemmas. I was torn between the love I felt for David and the understanding that we were on a path that could only lead to heartache and destruction. The day our affair became public was the day our secret world crumbled. I still remember the shock and disbelief as I saw the headlines, our names entwined in a scandal that spread like wildfire. The privacy we had so carefully guarded was shattered, leaving us exposed to the harsh judgment of the world. The backlash was immediate and brutal. The media painted me as the villain, the woman who had come between a beloved soccer star and his family. Friends and acquaintances looked at me differently, their eyes filled with a mix of pity and condemnation. I was thrust into a spotlight I never wanted, labeled as the other woman, a homewrecker. David was caught in his own storm, dealing with the fallout in his personal and professional life. Our communication became strained, each conversation tinged with a sense of urgency and fear. The affair had not just affected us, it had impacted everyone around us, especially Victoria and their children. The guilt that I had been suppressing came crashing down on me. The pain and humiliation I had inadvertently caused to an innocent family weighed heavily on my soul. I realized the magnitude of our actions, the selfishness of our choices. We had been living in a bubble, oblivious to the damage we were causing. I found myself isolated, both emotionally and socially. The few people I could confide in were wary of being associated with the scandal. My role as David's assistant was untenable. The professional relationship we had was overshadowed by our personal entanglement. I decided to step away, to leave the job and the city that had been the backdrop of our affair. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I battled with feelings of shame, regret, and loneliness. The public scrutiny was relentless, every aspect of my life dissected and judged. I struggled to come to terms with the role I had played in this saga, the hurt I had caused, but amidst the chaos there was a painful clarity. I realized that the affair, though born from genuine feelings, was a mistake. It was a relationship built on a foundation of secrecy and lies, and it had caused more harm than happiness. I understood that I needed to take responsibility for my actions, to learn from this experience and move forward. The fallout from the affair was a turning point in my life. It forced me to re-evaluate my choices, to understand the impact of my actions on others. I had to find a way to forgive myself, to grow from this experience, and to rebuild my life, one step at a time. In the aftermath of the scandal, as the dust began to settle, I found myself in a period of deep reflection. The affair with David and its public exposure had changed my life irrevocably. I had to confront not just the consequences of my actions, but also the person I had become in the process. The journey towards healing and self-forgiveness was not an easy one. I spent days wrestling with guilt and self-recrimination, trying to understand why I had allowed myself to be drawn into a situation that was against my better judgment. It was a time of introspection, of facing uncomfortable truths about my desires, my vulnerabilities, and my capacity for error. One of the hardest parts of moving forward was dealing with the public perception. I was more than the label of the other woman, yet that was how I was defined in the eyes of the world. Rebuilding my identity, separate from the scandal, was a daunting task. I had to rediscover my worth, to remember that I was more than just a footnote in someone else's story. As time passed, I began to put the pieces of my life back together. I sought new beginnings, both professionally and personally. I moved away from the world of celebrity, seeking a quieter, more grounded existence. It was a chance to start afresh, to build a life based on my terms, free from the shadows of fame and scandal. The affair with David taught me valuable lessons about love, integrity, and the complexities of human relationships. I learned about the fragility of trust, the weight of decisions, and the importance of respecting boundaries. It was a painful lesson, but one that shaped me in profound ways. Looking back, I realized that while I could not change the past, I could influence my future. I could choose to live with honesty and integrity, to make decisions that were true to my values, and to learn from my mistakes. The experience, though marked by pain and regret, was also a catalyst for growth and self-awareness. In the end, the affair became a part of my story, but it did not define me. I emerged from the experience stronger, more empathetic, and with a deeper understanding of myself. I found solace in new beginnings, in the possibilities that lay ahead. My journey of reflection and resolution was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was about finding forgiveness, not just from others, but from within. It was about accepting the past, embracing the present, and looking forward to a future filled with hope and the promise of new beginnings. If you like these stories where we delve into all perspectives of cheating, be sure to like and subscribe to Heartbreak Diaries. See you in the next video.